My name is Ranene Royer, and I'm here today to talk about the college admission process and how to pay for college. So the hope is with this video that it will help parents and students in the Camas School District know what it takes to get into a college, what the process is, the timeline, what type of colleges are out there, and then also how to fund that college experience. So to give you a little background about myself, currently I work for Washington State University in Pullman, and I'm an admissions counselor, and I've been doing this job for 9 years. And what I love about it is being able to develop relationships with families and work with the whole family through the admission process, because it is a family decision. The whole process is, it's not just a single individual, it's like everyone working together towards a goal. And then also how to fund that part of it. Prior to this, I was a high school counselor for 2.5 years. So I had experience sending students off to many different college systems throughout the United States, some Ivy League colleges, a lot of the UC system campuses or California State University campuses, and a lot of the private schools as well. Prior to that, I worked for the University of California, Davis, and I got to read applications and help make admission decisions and work with families there as well. So I have some college experience, and I know on the personal side of it, I have 3 adult daughters, and they all went through different college experiences too, and are currently still doing some college experiences. So I have that knowledge base to share with you. My oldest daughter went to California State University, Humboldt. My second daughter is currently at Central Washington University, and my third is at Western Washington University, majoring in theater. My second one is majoring in graphic design, and thus one of the reasons they tell mom that they're not at WSU, because we don't have those 2 particular majors. But then also as parents, you know, students don't always go towards the universities that we want to push them towards. So anyway, that's a little bit about my background and how I came into this information today. So starting off, the baseline for knowledge is what type of colleges are there out there. First of all, there's community colleges. I went to community college. All of my children went to community college for at least 1 class. It's a wonderful system, and it's definitely a lower cost way that a lot of families can afford so that they can afford the college experience. There are also vocational and technical schools. An example of that would be Perry Technical Institute, where they teach something specifically, a specific skill to prepare someone to get ready for a job. So if you're going to a school to become a veterinary technician or dental hygienist or welder, you know, those type of jobs, they train you specifically at a tech school for that. And then there's the 4-year colleges. And typically when you say I'm going to college, that's generally what people think of as the 4-year college experience. So that's what we'll be talking about mostly today. So there's different types of 4-year colleges, even within that category. We have our public, and of course an example is my wonderful university, Washington State University. And there are privates. A local example of that is the University of Portland. A lot of time the private colleges will have some kind of religious affiliation, but not necessarily. It could be completely secular as well, like Reed College. That's a local example of a secular private college. So here's the big question, what's the difference? Private versus public. Well, so these are some generalizations, but generally speaking, the public is less expensive than the private school. And that's because you have taxpayer dollars that are supplementing the college experience. Typically, state colleges are large. Now, an exception would be our local WSU Vancouver campus. They're a smaller campus, about 3,000 students, and they service Southwest Washington, so it's more like a private school feel, but at a public school campus. But the one in Pullman, the one I represent, Washington State University in Pullman, we have over 20,000 students, and that's more typical for the public colleges. Usually, public colleges have a wide variety of majors, and another example at our campus, we have over 200 areas of study at WSU in Pullman. So many of the state colleges have a similarly wide range of majors to choose from. They tend to have more services on campus. For example, again, I'll use WSU since I'm so familiar with our campus. We have free busing anywhere in town, just as part of your student fees. You don't have to pay for an Uber or bus fee or anything like that. We also have a rec center that's part of the student fee. It's gorgeous, 2 stories tall, has an indoor track, and my favorite, an indoor Olympic-sized swimming pool. Totally awesome. For our students, it's the most popular place to be when they're not in class, or studying, I should say. We also have free tutoring, free math tutoring, free writing tutoring. So we have many, many other free services for students. That's very typical for the public schools. Generally, at the private schools, their tuition tends to be more expensive, but don't let that stop you applying if you're interested in a private school, because private schools also have more flexibility with their scholarships. So even though the price tag might be more expensive, a private school may be less expensive to you. So we'll talk more about that when we start talking about the finances, but just as a general rule of thumb, their price tag is more expensive. Usually the private schools are smaller, but of course there's some big exceptions to that. And I mentioned here, we do have they tend to have the bigger scholarship pools. And they also can be more specialized. For example, DigiPen in the Seattle area, it's really special. It's specialized towards students going into digital technology like animation, gaming, that type of thing. So it can be very specialized. All right, so then within the state schools, we have in-state and out-of-state. So an example of an out-of-state that's local would be Portland State University. And the big difference is out-of-state tuition. Typically, it just plain old costs more to go to an out-of-state institution, generally speaking. But there is a way that we can reduce that cost, and that's through the Western Undergraduate Exchange, otherwise known as WUI. So if you go around saying WUI, admissions counselors will know what you're talking about. And each school, basically what WUI is the public schools in the Western United States have agreed to give some kind of discount to students from the other Western states that are not part of the state the school's from. So the schools can put a wide variety of limitations around who they give that WUI scholarship to. I'll talk about our campus later. At PSU, Portland State, I have listed what the requirements are. So that you have to have a 3.2 unweighted high school GPA and certain SAT or ACT scores. And then the same thing for transfer students. They have a 3.0 GPA requirement for the WUI. So there can be some kind of GPA or SAT requirement. Other schools will say, nope, everyone from other states gets the WUI. So you'll have to look into that, but just to give you some terminology to ask about when you're looking into your colleges. Okay, so here are some examples of tuition for students who are in Washington. So at Washington State University, and this is whether you go to the Vancouver campus, the Tri-Cities campus, the Pullman campus, we all have the same tuition. Now our mandatory fees and the living expenses will be different, but the tuition is the same. So for this year, in 2018-2019, the tuition is $10,298. For Portland State, it's $26,130. And if you have that WUI scholarship we were just talking about, it knocks it down to $13,107. And for the University of Portland, it's $44,026. So you can see there's a huge difference there. But once again, make sure you look at the scholarship. So don't let that price tag encourage you not to apply if you're interested in that school. All right, so now we get to the nitty-gritty. How do you get into college? So basically, all colleges are looking for the same things. They're looking for good grades. Now, how they define good will be different at each school, but we're looking for good grades. We want students to take hard classes to challenge themselves while they're in high school. So we don't want to see, for example, a student who's taking 6 classes of PE, and that's it in their senior year. And we want to make sure that they have a math and an English and their social studies and all of that. A lot of schools are looking for SAT scores, good SAT or ACT scores. And for those of you who don't know, those are both comparable exams. And the SAT typically is more popular in the West Coast and the East Coast. And then the Midwest, it's typically the ACT that people talk about. For the schools in the state of Washington, all of us, public, private, we tend to accept either one, and in the Oregon area too, in this little area of the country. So when I was a high school counselor, I recommended that students take both. Why not? Just take the SAT and the ACT and see which one you do better in. Because I would have students that had similar grades, similar courses, they would take both exams, and one would do much better on the SAT, one would do much better on the ACT. I had no way to predict, so I just said, take them both. And for our system, that's a really good thing. At WSU, we will only look at your highest SAT or ACT scores. Now, when you apply to some of the more elite, perhaps Ivy League schools, sometimes they just want you to take it once, or they'll only look at your first score setting, your test setting, or something like that. So you need to investigate that if you're going for the more elite campuses. But for Washington State University, we like you to take it as many times as you want to, and in fact, we actually will super score. And what that means is if you take it more than once, we will, and you, let's say for example you do better on the math one time and you do better on the reading the next, we will actually look at the different parts and see which one you've done best and take those parts and pair them together for the best total score for you. So for Washington State, any of our campuses, it's much better to take it more than once. Okay, the other thing we want, some schools are looking for extracurricular activities, and so surprising, this may be surprising to you, Washington State University does not typically consider extracurricular activities in our application process. We are looking at the coursework that students have taken, we're looking at their grades, their test scores, grade trends, things along those lines. And that tends to be typical for state colleges. There's some big exceptions. For example, the UC system's a big exception with that. But for our scholarship component, that's where we really look at the extracurricular activities. So that can really vary from school to school, but a lot of times students will hear extracurricular. So if you are considering a state school, look at that, because if you have only so much time in the day, and if you have to pick between studying and doing better in your classes or doing that extracurricular, and you think you're doing that extracurricular to help you get into college, for our system at least, it's much better to have the higher GPA. So you might want to look at that even early on in your high school experience. Then another thing that we're looking for is diversity. And that can be diversity in a lot of different ways, and that's because colleges realize that we benefit from learning around people who are different from ourselves. And so that diversity could be with gender. For example, Mills College in California has traditionally been an all-women's college. So if you were a male applying to that college, you had a much better chance of getting in because they're trying to be more inclusive and have men come to their campus. So gender could be something that a college is looking for. It also could be with ethnicity. Typically the state schools were trying to reflect the ethnicity of our states, and particularly Washington State University, we are a land grant institution where we have a specific mission from the federal government to serve the people of our region, so we want to be reflective of the people of our region. And then also geographic diversity. So we like it when people from other states come to Washington State University because we become enriched by learning from people with different life experiences. So for example, we're very popular in the state of Hawaii. We get a lot of students from Hawaii that apply each year and end up coming to Washington State to get their mainland experience. But if you're from the state of Washington and you apply to a school, say in Ohio, you might have a slightly better chance because they want people from different states. It's fun to be able to say that the college has people from all 50 states represented, or people from different regions represented. So that's something that some colleges will look at. The other thing, and this is more for private colleges, I think, or more selective colleges, is demonstrated interest in their institution. So colleges, let's say they have one more spot to fill, and they have two equally good applicants to fill that spot. And one of say the same similar grades, similar courses, similar SAT or ACT scores, similar activities, that type of thing, but one had gone on a campus tour and had actually come to visit the campus beforehand, and the other one had not. well, the college may be slightly more likely to admit a student who had visited because that student has demonstrated interest in their campus and therefore are more likely to actually enroll when that time comes. So there's a wide variety of things that colleges look for. So when you're trying to decide which colleges to apply for, that's something that you can consider or maybe ask the admission counselors about. All right, so averages. Particularly we're talking about when usually in the admissions process, when you say averages, we mean GPA averages or SAT or ACT averages. So our GPA averages for Washington State University last year was a 3.39. For all the students that were admitted, that was the average GPA. But within our system, if you have a 3.5 unweighted GPA or higher, you have assured admission. That means you're guaranteed to get in. You could have a very low SAT score. In fact, you could have the lowest SAT score in the whole history of SATs, and you still would get in at Washington State with a 3.5 or higher. So that's something to know, particularly earlier in your high school career, so that you can be motivated to get that higher GPA. You also need we call them CATERs, and it's a set of prerequisite courses that you take during your high school years, and that's for any public institution in the state of Washington. So that's University of Washington, Western Washington University, Central Washington University, Eastern Washington University, Evergreen, all of us. We all require these CATER classes, and we'll go over what those specific courses are in just a minute. And then you need to take an SAT or an ACT. So for an SAT, we don't really keep averages at WSU because we put less emphasis on your testing than we do on your GPA. But just to give you some ballpark figures, maybe a 990 on just the math and the critical reading, up to 1160 would be kind of mid-range for our campus. And then on the ACT, maybe a 19 to 22 composite score would be something kind of mid-range for those who've been admitted. So here's a list of the CATERs. So it's 4 years of English, so make sure you have your English class every year you're in high school. We want 3 years of math, that's Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Now, if you're taking Algebra 2 your senior year, then you don't have to worry about the next item on the list. But most people will complete Algebra 2 their junior year or maybe even earlier. And then we will need a year of senior year quantitative math course. So what this is, in Washington, we had so many people who were finishing their Algebra 2 in the junior year, then they would skip their senior year, not take any math, and then go to college, have a math requirement, and flunk. So we thought, okay, how can we prevent this problem? So, I know, let's require something that keeps those math brain cells going the senior year. So this quantitative senior year math, or quantitative course, senior year quantitative course, it could be something in physics, it could be chemistry because that's algebra based, it could be pre-calc, it could be trig or math analysis or statistics, and then we've even expanded it to computer science. We let your school district decide which specific courses will count for that, but our theory is just something that keeps your math brain cells going so that you can finish your math requirement, successfully complete your math requirement when you get to college. We also need 3 years of social sciences, and usually people get those completed just in completing your high school requirements. That's your history, your CWP, your geography, those type of courses. We need 2 years of a lab science, and typically people will take 1 year of biology and 1 year of chemistry. Out of those 2 years, one has to be algebra based, so that's why usually chemistry will complete that requirement. And we need 2 years of a world language. So that would be 2 years of Spanish, 2 years of French, German, or whatever it is that you want to take. It has to be in the same language, so you have to have it count. You can't have 1 year of Spanish and 1 year of French and have that be your 2 years. So it needs to be 2 years of the same world language. And then we need 1 year of art or an extra year of one of the other courses. So it could be you really love foreign language and you take a 3rd year, then that 3rd year would count as your last requirement. Or you like science, so you take another college prep science course, and that could replace that. Or if you just want to explore and take an art class or music class, something along those lines, then that would complete your last year. So as you can see, the CATRs are fairly simple to complete within your Camas High School list of requirements. Okay, so some more averages. Portland State University, their GPA average was 3.38, and they have a guaranteed admission with a 3.0. And then with below a 3.0, then you have to have that SAT or an ACT score. And then you can see by comparison, the University of Portland, their average GPA was a 3.65, so that was significantly higher. And their ACT score, the average was 26. So some other average GPAs, University of Washington 3.78, Whitworth University 3.74, Gonzaga 3.72, Pacific Lutheran 3.68, Warner Pacific 3.17, Evergreen 3.04. So you can see there's a wide variety of averages here. So the point of this is just for you to explore the different colleges and see where you might fit in. If that's kind of close to your average, at least have one of your schools that you select that's similar to your average, so you have a really good chance of getting into that one. All right, so that was just a quick overview of what admission counselors are really looking for. And now we're going into how to pay for college. So this is going to transition here. So when it's very complicated thinking about how to pay for college, but the way I've organized it in my brain is by the funding source of the money. So where does the money come from? And that's how I've been able to kind of get my mind wrapped around it. So first of all, there's the FAFSA, and that can generate some federal funds and some state funds. Then there are scholarships, and this is just for terminology. Another word sometimes people use in lieu of would be, the word scholarship would be grants. So grants and scholarships, those are both free money for you to go to college, or your child to go to college. Also, people will use part-time jobs, student part-time jobs. You might have heard of work study or other college-based jobs. Students will work while they're in college to help supplement their college education. And of course, loans. We've heard about student loans. And then the family contribution, what the family's portion of the paying for college. All right, so with the FAFSA, and then I do need to tell you guys, I am not a financial aid counselor. I work in admissions. So this is just some general information that I've gathered over the years and also in working with my own children. But just to give you an overview, and then I strongly encourage you to talk to a financial aid counselor. They can go into much more details about this. All right, so you complete your FAFSA, and the FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And please, when you apply, please do the FAFSA.gov, G-O-V. We have seen students, there's some scams out there that actually charge you money, and I've seen the webpage, they look just like the free one, but they charge you $25, $30, $50 for a free application. And in our office at WSU in Pullman, we've already received several of those this year. So don't do it. If you have to pay money, don't, just click out of that. So make sure it's FAFSA.gov. We want you to complete it every year in October, if possible, and it's not too late. Our priority deadline at Washington State is January 31st. So, and other schools have different priority dates. And you can still apply, you submit the FAFSA after that date, but just means that the free money may have run out. So the earlier you can submit that, the better, and it opens each year on October 1st. Both parents and students need to complete this unless the student is 24 or going to be 24 during that year, then they can be considered an independent student, or if there's a court order that says that the student's independent, some special circumstances like that. Otherwise, they will use the parent income. That's one of the biggest questions I get. It's like, well, the student will come to me and say, well, I'm independent, I've been paying for myself all year, my parents don't help out, why do I need to put them? But it's like, that's what the federal government has said. So they've made a decision that the parents are responsible, even if they're not paying for it, they still have to be included in on the FAFSA. And here's a link to the FAFSA.gov webpage. So the FAFSA will determine what your EFC is. And EFC means Estimated Family Contribution. So they decide through this complicated series of formulas what they think your family can contribute to your child's education. Generally speaking, they will look at family income And they will also look at how many people in your family are currently going to college. So those are some, and also how many people in your family. Because if you have $40,000 a year for 10 people, that's a lot less per person than $40,000 a year for 3 people. So that's one of the big factors that they use in determining. So then the EFC is what they will subtract from the cost of attendance. So every school, every college in the United States that receives federal aid is required to post what their average cost of attendance is. And the cost of attendance includes their room and board, their books, their tuition, fees, all that. And transportation even is included in that, and they come up with a number, and that's called the cost of attendance. Then the federal government will subtract the EFC from that and come up with what they think the family needs to contribute. So we'll go over a little bit more of that in a few minutes. The FAFSA also determines eligibility for federal and state aid, and they determine eligibility for loans. And loans are typically when the biggest form of aid that I see, they're most common. A lot of times, even families with fairly high income, their students will still be eligible for federal loans. And just as a general rule of thumb, federal loans are more client-friendly or more customer-friendly than, say, if you went down to Wells Fargo or Chase or one of the mainstream banks. They typically have lower interest rates, and they have ways to defer the loans if you're not making enough money and for a period of time. And then also you don't have to start repaying them until 6 months after graduation. So it just tends to be a little bit easier for the consumer. So here's an example. Let's say a family gets an EFC of 0. So the federal government has determined that they don't have to pay anything, they're not going to contribute anything for the student's college education. And then for WSU, our cost of attendance at WSU Pullman is $27,487. So the student will get $27,487 in aid. Now, this is the caveat. The money, they'll get that money. Some of it may be free money, but some of it also may be loans. So that's the big thing to pay attention to. So here's an example. WSU Pullman. This is our estimated cost of attendance. This is pulled straight from our webpage. And this has the budget of what an average student would pay coming to Pullman for this current year. So it has resident and non-resident. Non-resident is anyone who's not in the state of Washington, and resident for all the Washingtonians. And this is based on semester. So it's $5,134 for this current semester. We're on at Washington State University, we're on the semester system as opposed to quarter system that some of our public colleges use. And then we have $656 mandatory fees. The average student pays $5,699 in room and board. So that's the rent, your electricity, your all your utilities, and your food costs. And then books, miscellaneous, transportation. Now the last two categories are the ones that families, there's much more flexibility in those. I personally think that $1,054 is too much for miscellaneous expenses. For our family, it was more like $300 for the semester. So it's like just miscellaneous is for shampoo or deodorant, sweatshirts, and that's $1,000 buys a lot of sweatshirts. So, so that's something you can also be more frugal and save some money rather than having to take out those loans to cover those more flexible expenses. And then also transportation, $717 for the semester. For our area, that's a lot getting over to Pullman, because since we're popular in Hawaii, that's why our average is, they have to fly over, and it's going to be much more expensive to get flights to Pullman than for here. Most everyone commutes. We do the carpooling. So it costs $20 to $40. You share gas money, and one person will drive, and you have 4 people driving back and forth. Right this second, we have about 1,000 people or more from our general area that are currently attending WSU and Pullman. So there's a lot of ways to find car rides back and forth. So for us, I think that's, for our area, in Vancouver, Camas area, I think that's a way that we can cut down the college costs. So anyway, every college that you're looking at will have some kind of breakdown that will show you what line by line, what the costs are and their cost of attendance for going to that university. So here's just a made-up example of what someone might receive for WSU to pay all those costs. So let's say, and this is someone who has no money at all. They might be someone who gets free or reduced lunch. I mean, to get the EFC as a 0, it's usually someone's very high need. So they might get, for example, $6,000 in a Pell Grant. That's free money from the federal government. They might get $8,000 from the Washington State Need Grant, which is the state of Washington giving college money for the very low income folks. And then they might include in there $5,500 for federal loans. And then they have to make up the difference, so because the others doesn't equal the 27,000 some odd, so then they have to put in something else. So a lot of times I'll see, even with the people that are very, very low income, they'll have $7,900 in Parent Plus loans. So that's loans that the parents would be responsible for. And typically the interest rate is higher than for the student loans, and typically the rates are better than if you go to a local bank. So it's an option, but if students are more frugal and if they have maybe a part-time job, they can contribute other ways, maybe get those scholarships, so then the parents wouldn't be taking out the loans for college. So scholarships, that's the one that we all want, because that's the free money. You don't have to pay back after you finish with college. So the question is, how do you get it? It's difficult. There are a lot of scholarships out there, but it takes time to research them. And then each scholarship has their own little requirements that are very different from the next. So the students, the families that I have seen that have been the most successful with this are those who use it as a family project. And if they do it, say, during the senior year, maybe every Sunday from 2 to 5 is scholarship time. Or you just set aside a piece of time every week and you research scholarships, write essays for scholarships, fill out scholarship application forms, and just have a consistent time to fill out the scholarships throughout the whole year. Those are the families that I've seen have been the most successful. And a lot of times they'll work as a team. Now, it has to be the student that's writing the essay, and it's the student that's filling out the forms, but maybe a parent can research potential essays or potential scholarships for the students. Maybe the parent can look over the essay, make sure that there's no typos in it, or maybe the parent can write the address on the envelope and take the application to the post office to mail it off. Those kinds of things. So maybe being in a more supportive role. So in our family, I was in charge of the Excel spreadsheet. So I researched and helped research different scholarships, and would put the link in an Excel spreadsheet and put the date that it was due and that kind of thing. So it just becomes more of a process. And so that's, I think, a way that parents can be very, very helpful with this. One of we have two main types of scholarships. One is institutional scholarships. That's something that comes from the colleges that you have applied to and you plan to go to. So at WSU Pullman, our most popular one is the University Achievement Award. And it is based on GPA and SAT or ACT score. And it's like a teeter-totter. The higher your GPA, the lower your SAT or ACT score can be, and vice versa. And so that's, when talking about SAT and ACT earlier, although it's not as important for us in the admission part, it does become very important for the scholarship part. So it's still good to try to do as best you can on the SAT or the ACT, or encourage your student to do as best as they can. So for us, we have two different levels for the University Achievement Award. We have a $2,000 scholarship for the first 2 years, and for some majors it's all 4 years. And we have a $4,000 scholarship for the first 2 years, and for some majors it's all 4 years. And that's the Distinguished University Achievement Award. And so those are just different levels of GPA and scholarships. And so those are listed on our webpage, and other schools have similar programs. We also have this fabulous scholarship. It's called a Visitation Scholarship, and I've heard of other schools that have this as well. For us, it's listed on this is just our general brochure to hand out to prospective students. And on the back, we have it listed. It's called Experience WSU. And there we go. And it's online as well at visit.wsu.edu. And basically, students come to the campus, and then if they do decide to come to us in the fall, they get a $1,000 scholarship to come visit. Now the trick is they have to already have been admitted. We open up our application in mid-August, so students during their senior year, they can actually apply even before the school start here in Camas. You can already have completed your application. And so we try to get back to students as quickly as we can. We do rolling admission in our system. And then once a student is admitted, then they can sign up for one of these experienced WSU events, come to the campus, get a full campus tour, talk to professors, talk to current students, talk to financial aid people, and then if the student does decide to come to us in the fall, then we just reduce their tuition by $1,000. I've seen other colleges that do have visitation events as scholarships as well. So there's just a wide variety of ways of applying for institutional scholarships. The other thing that we have is the WSU General Scholarship Application. That's for either the Pullman campus or the Vancouver campus, and it's one application form. There's 6 short answer essays on it, and that's where you really want to plug your community experience, your leadership skills, challenges that you've overcome, things like that. And we scan that and send it to all of our scholarship committees on campus. We have over 800 scholarships that are based off that one application. So that's just our system, but every other college has their own system for scholarships as well. So make sure you find out what the system is for the institutional scholarship for the campus that your students are applying to. Then we have private scholarships. And this is where someone has some money that they want to help needy students go on to college because they went to college and they just want to help the community. So those sources, that's the one that's difficult to find because they are at all kinds of places. My personal favorite is called thewashboard.org, and I have the link here. It's thewashboard.org. And what I like about it, it's kind of like, I think of it like a dating service online, like online dating. You put in your profile and then they match you up with scholarships that they think might be potential matches. And then you have to click on each one to see if it is indeed a match for you. But what I like about it is it's for Washington students, so there's less competition. So just an example, so the general rule of thumb is if you have to choose between doing a local scholarship or a national scholarship, always choose a local scholarship. You have a much better chance of getting it, even if the local scholarship is only a few $100s, much higher chance. And my example is when I was a high school counselor, we had 2 $500 scholarships for anyone who's going into education, any level of education, just anyone going into education. And we only had 4 applications for those 2 scholarships. So the students' chances were 50% to get $500 just for free, just by filling out an application. Whereas you have these national scholarships that are great, they might have $10,000 or so, but you have 10 million people who are applying to that, so your chances are much lower. And of course, it's better to apply to everything that you're eligible for, but if you have to choose, please choose the local scholarships over the national ones. So just to give you some ideas of places to look for them, so the washboard is the most convenient one. But also look at your employers. I've talked to some parents who work for Frito-Lay, and apparently that they have really good scholarships for their the children of their employees. There's a lot of unions that will have good scholarships for the children of their employees. So just check with your employers and find out. And sometimes the student employers, like McDonald's, has scholarships for some of their workers. And so just look at all the employers in the family and see if there's any scholarship opportunities there. Churches, a lot of times, particularly one of my daughters applied to Pacific Lutheran, and there could be a specific scholarship if the person was a member of a Lutheran church, and they'd automatically get X number of dollars or something like that. So check with your churches and find out if there's any scholarships there. I know another denomination that for their denominational school would give full ride scholarship to students who had certain GPAs and that kind of thing. So check into that. There's also a lot of community-based scholarship. For example, the Rotary Club. That's locally, we have a really good active club that gives out scholarships every year. It might be the Lions Club or Elks Lodge, or those type of clubs. Where I find out about them is our local paper. So a lot of times they'll have those scholarships listed. But also you have an excellent resource. If you look at the Career Center webpage at Camas High School, they have a really robust database of local scholarships. So you'll be able to find a lot of them there. And also, I just want to encourage you to contact your local Career Center technician because they have the scoop on what's happening locally with the scholarships. So if you have questions about any needs listed, please contact them. And then also there's school-based scholarships. So one of the schools that I work with, they have a $500 scholarship for anyone at that high school that's going on to college, period. It's like, wow. So that would be something that you would find out from your Career Center technician. All right, so if you have questions, I am local. Even though I work for WSU Pullman, I live in Battleground, Washington. So I'm very close by, and I love to work with Camas people. And here's my email. It's ranene.royer@wsu.edu. It's my first name and last name. And then my cell phone. And feel free to text me if that's more convenient, or call me. It's 360-690-6429. Thank you so much for listening to me talk about admissions and admissions to college and how to pay for college. And I hope this has answered some of your questions.